Hello, and welcome to this episode of Pharmacy in Flux. We're glad you could join us. Our guest today is Dayle Acorn. Dayle is the Executive Director of the Canadian Foundation for Pharmacy, and he's been in that role for the past 14 years. Dayle came into the role after almost 3 decades of experience as an executive with progressive positions in the pharmaceutical industry. His teamwork earned him the Distinguished Prix Galien Below Nickerson Award for Industry's Product of the Year, and he has also received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Accredited Pharmaceutical Manufacturer Representative Education Program. In 2015, Dayle was awarded CPHA's Honorary Life Membership, and in 2018, he was recognized as a leader in pharmacy by Pharmacy Practice Plus Business. Dayle's also a publisher. He is the publisher of Pharmacy Management in Canada, which helps serve the educational needs of pharmacy students, managers, and pharmacy owners, and it is the only textbook of its kind in Canada. So Dayle, we're glad to have you aboard. Welcome to today's show.
Hi, Derek. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Well, we're glad you could be here, and I think this is an important time to have the discussion that we're going to have today. And I think we should start with a bit of a description of what is the Canadian Foundation for Pharmacy and what's the foundation's mandate. I think a lot of people either haven't ever heard of the foundation, or if they've heard of it, they don't really understand what the foundation's all about and what the mandate of the foundation is. So maybe you could just start by telling us a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks, Derek. It's actually very good timing to have this conversation. Last year, 2020, was actually the 75th anniversary of CFP in Canada. Very quickly, started in 1945, and it was started by the leaders in pharmacy who recognized that there was a lot of shortcomings in the profession in the areas of education, research, etc. So they got together and they started the foundation to help support the profession in a variety of ways. So here we are 75 years later. As I said last year, we didn't expect to be sharing our anniversary with a global pandemic, but we are. And but it's allowed me the opportunity to look at a lot of the old history books. Believe it or not, I actually have the minute books from the foundation back to 1945. So I can clearly see how the foundation has changed over the years and how we've morphed into what we do today to help support the profession. We are a registered charity and a not-for-profit, so we are Canada's only national charity for all of pharmacy.
That's great, and I think that it's important to just emphasize that point that the foundation is a charity, and so any contributions to the foundation from perhaps an individual or an organization would receive a tax receipt for their contribution. So that's a good segue to my next question. Is let's have a little bit of a discussion about how the foundation raises money to fund its endeavors. What are the various avenues you have to raise your funds, and then we'll talk a little bit later on about how do we use those funds. So for now, how does the foundation raise its money?
A good question, Derek. We have a number of ways to do it. Obviously, there's no one way that's going to really sustain us, and we've seen that during COVID. But the bulk of the funds that we have with the foundation are primarily sponsorship and attendance at our live events. Anything from sort of gala dinners to the innovation showcase. We have a golf tournament, probably one of the few left in the industry. So that's one way. We do get a lot of donations from individual pharmacists. Many cases, those are people that have benefited from funding from the foundation over the years. Other cases is people that are looking to give back to the profession, and they see the foundation as one way to do that. And as you mentioned, also get a charitable tax receipt. So, and we run a couple of programs. We do have a magazine which we sell sponsorship or advertising for. So, a lot of the support comes from national chains, pharmaceutical industry, as well as individual pharmacist donations. Derek, I should point out that this year we benefited greatly from a couple of sizable donations from Alberta's Pharmacists Association, as well as OPA, in recognition of our 75th anniversary.
Well, that's great, and it sounds like you have a bit of a diversified revenue stream. But I can imagine from my own experience with the BC Pharmacy Association and just other organizations and businesses that I've talked to over the course of the past year that COVID has had a tremendous impact on people's ability to fundraise. And you hear that even on the news all the time. Charities all complaining about how difficult it's been through the course of 2020, and here we are in early 2021, and things are still looking difficult. So has COVID affected the foundation's ability to raise funds, and if so, what have you done to try to mitigate that impact?
Yeah, excellent question, and we're in the same boat of many others. You can imagine, being, our work is with the profession of pharmacy. So, when COVID hit back in, March of 2020, it hit everybody, and with pharmacy, the profession, as you well know, it was all hands on deck. So, as far as my ability to contact anybody in the profession, like there was nothing for 2 months, as every individual pharmacist, pharmacy owner, associations was focused on the ability to get product back out to their patients, and we totally understood that. And so the first obvious surprise to us was no live events. Some companies and corporations made that declaration early on. So when I was doing some financial analysis for the board back in June, one of the scenarios we looked at was no revenue from events for 2020. So the first real look at it was a cash flow analysis to say what's going to happen to us, if we have no revenue coming in for the entire year. Having said that, we started to shift in different ways. We quickly looked at two areas. One was sort of non-live events, so things like our digital newsletter. We do have the ability to sell advertising on it, as well as our pharmacy magazine. So we put a lot of effort into those two things. In late August, we actually did have a modified golf tournament. Very much unusual, no shotgun start, very much following provincial health guidelines. So, but we did pull it off in a limited way, and I think many of the people that did attend, along with masks and social distancing, were just happy to be outdoors. So those are the big things. The other thing we really tried to emphasize was donations from individual pharmacists. So we did an additional mailer to pharmacists in June. We did one again in the fall. We also looked at other ways to try to raise the awareness and donations from individual pharmacists. So that has increased our revenues for 2020 as well.
Well, it's good that you've been able to shift and still generate some revenue because, of course, having the goals of the foundation be really focused on a couple of areas. One is certainly education. The other is pharmacy practice research. Without money, you can't support those endeavors, I guess, and so that makes it difficult. So I'm glad that the foundation has found ways to keep things going and continue with the funding of practice research. So that's probably a good segue to where I want to go next, and I'd like to have a little bit of discussion with you about um, first of all, why does the foundation feel that it is important to fund practice research, and then we can talk a little bit more about you know some of the specifics around what kinds of projects does the foundation support. What kind of process do people have to go through to access funding from the foundation, and what how does that benefit the profession in the long term? So I know I've thrown a lot of things out there. We don't have to, I don't expect you to answer every question in one giant long answer, but let's start talking a little bit about that research support.
Sure, and just to segue on from when we looked at 2020, a couple of conversations we had was, do we do a research grant in 2020 given all of the chaos about COVID-19? But we felt it was important to continue. So despite the fact we knew our revenues would be down in 2020, we did decide to fund all of the things that we normally would. Any of the awards that we do, research, etc., grants. We decided to do it all. We figured we'll just, we can survive 2020. We'll see what it looks like in 2021. But we felt that from our perspective, this was, even more important now to continue to support the profession in any way we could. The two big areas that we've concentrated on, over the years, one is education. The other, as you mentioned, is research. And the research piece has evolved. There used to be a lot of therapeutic research, all kinds of epidemiological research. But more recently, when I took over, Derek, which was 2007, the previous year, Bill 102 was introduced in Ontario, and that was the very first, I would say, attack by provincial governments to, cut funding to pharmacy, to look at ways to cut costs, and pharmacy really fell into that category. And so pharmacy was under pressure to make up some of those losses and also figure out how they could be viable. So from our perspective, we felt two things. Number one was, how do we help the foundation or the pharmacy profession to expand their services? What more can they do to generate revenue? Because the filling of prescriptions was going to continue to decline. And the second part we looked at strategically with our research was really how we can help provide evidence, of the value of pharmacy. So those two areas, looking to support new areas for pharmacy. Nowadays we call it scope of practice, looking for ways to pharmacy can expand their service. But the other thing was, how do we provide evidence to protect the services that pharmacy currently has? So those are our two sort of strategic directions for practice research.
So I know the answers to these questions because, of course, and people may not know, I was on the board and chair of the foundation in recent years, and so. But I think for the benefit of the audience, can you give us a sense of dollars? So, how much money is the foundation putting into research on an annual basis, approximately? How many projects does that support? And how are the results used to advance the profession?
Yeah, good question, Derek. So there's we earmark each year 100,000. There's years where we've given up more than that if we happen to get projects that we more than one project that we like. The 100 to 120,000 probably usually affords us 2 to 3 research projects a year. So since I started in 2007, we've funded I think we're now up to 30 research projects from across the country. And we've looked at partnership with provincial associations. For example, we funded a project with Alberta's Pharmacists Association looking at their care plans and how they could support evidence to share with government that there's value in those plans. We've funded minor ailment research in Saskatchewan. We've also funded smoking cessation in Manitoba. And hypertension in Ontario. We've got some other research funds going on right now looking at the use of digital technology, use of apps for supporting things like mental health, how pharmacy can look at other ways to support patients. So we've done a lot of them. The last two, one was to look at providing evidence for the support of expanded scope of services so that they would demonstrate value. So what we're hoping is that the research that we fund, the results will be usable by provincial associations to lobby on behalf of the profession. For us, we're a national organization, but we recognize that pharmacy care and healthcare is provincial. So our best look is to how we can support provincial associations, mostly in their lobbying efforts, as I said, either provide evidence or to expand services.
Yeah, that's really great. As I heard you rattling off some of the different subject areas and types of research that the foundation supported over the past number of years, it's really clear to people, I hope, that are listening, that this is really relevant stuff. This is stuff that is at the front lines of pharmacy practice and community pharmacy today, and things that advocacy organizations like national and provincial associations can absolutely use to advocate to advance the profession, both for things like getting better funding for some of the services that exist today, or expanding scope of practice to expand the role of pharmacists as part of the healthcare team. And I think those are all really important goals, but I'm really glad to see, and I hope the audience is understanding that this isn't just an academic exercise that's producing research that really doesn't have any value for the profession. I think the outcomes of the research funded by the foundation are providing tremendous value to the profession, and a lot of the advancement in scope of practice we've seen in the past number of years are due in part to the results of some of the research that the foundation has funded. Yeah, is that a fair assessment from your perspective?
Yeah, we don't have a ton of funds. I mean, as one person once said to me that $100,000 is a lot of money, but in research, $100,000 is not a lot of money. Many research projects can be much more than that, and we've also been partial funders in some projects. That's why we look to partner with associations, etc. So we look for the biggest impact. So when we do our research applications each year, and usually with our board meeting in March, we will come out of there with an approval to fund. Last year, an example, we get 37 applications from across the country. So the board goes through the effort to narrow those down. But when we get to sort of the final projects, we really look at which ones are going to have the greatest impact on the profession. And that's coast to coast. I mean, a couple I should have mentioned, Derek, was one was we helped fund the prescribing for urinary tract infection in New Brunswick. That was a big project that there was evidence that the New Brunswick needed for theirs, but we think that's going to be, research that any province can use if they're looking to expand, pharmacist prescribing, for example. The other one, very specifically, was minor ailments in Saskatchewan. They had funding for that project for that service for 3 years, but no evidence to show that it was good, bad, or indifferent. So we funded that research to demonstrate the value of that. And of course, as we know, that other provinces have actually taken that research and used it as support for their lobbying efforts to expand services in their own provinces.
Yeah, excellent examples, and I'm glad you mentioned the UTI project in the Maritimes in New Brunswick, and Dr. Ross Suyuki's. Ross has had some good support from the foundation, but he's also been a tremendous supporter of the foundation over the years. But I think your initial points just now about $100,000 being a lot of money, but not a lot of money when it comes to research, is an important one, and it makes me. I think it's an opportune time to mention that over the past couple of years, the foundation has had a fundraising initiative called 25 for a Million. And the idea around that was, if you take all the pharmacists across Canada, and if every pharmacist donated a mere $25, the foundation would have $1 million to put into research, not just 100,000. And so with that, I'm going to just personally appeal to the audience right now, and whoever's watching or listening, to say, make that contribution to the foundation, because while you may not see it directly, you're going to see it definitely indirectly over the course of time as the profession advances. You're benefiting from all of the research that the foundation is absolutely supporting and funding. And the more money the foundation has, the more you can support it. And I'm going to, at this point, and jump in here after I finish this piece, if you want to say anything. But I think it's also important for people to, again, remember, first of all, the foundation is a charitable organization. It's a nationally registered charity. It's not a not-for-profit like most of the provincial associations, for example. So it's a charity. And the second thing is you're the only paid employee of the foundation. And so I want to emphasize that, because, oftentimes people are a little skeptical about donating to certain charities, always wondering, how much of the money they're donating is really going to the actual endeavors of the charity, as opposed to overhead and management and salaries and all of those kinds of things. And I can assure people that a gigantic portion, largely a percentage of the donations that anybody makes to the foundation, absolutely go to fund research, and that the overhead of the foundation is very small, because all of the board members are on there on a voluntary basis, and don't really incur any expenses other than to when you have to have an in-person board meeting, which, given COVID, probably hasn't happened for a year. So I think those are important things.
Yeah, well, a good point, Derek. For 2020, we traded in paying fees for the meeting rooms, etc., for a subscription to Zoom, and so there are some upsides to to COVID. But yeah, that's a good point, Derek. I am the only employee. We do we do hire a lot of people on a freelance basis, certainly on the communication side for our newsletters, our magazine, etc. But my background, I think I maybe mentioned before, it's marketing. So I felt that's the biggest value I could bring to the foundation. So I often say to people that we've created a model where we are self-sufficient to run the foundation through events and sponsorship, etc. So when we get to that component of funding, which comes from donations, and it's about 10% of our annual revenues. That's all that comes from individual donation. What I say to people is, if we can increase that donation, every dollar can go into research. Because if we're self-sufficient, we're not looking to make a lot of money every year. I'd be happy to spend 200,000, 300,000 on research if we had the revenue coming in, number one, and we saw the valuable research projects that we would invest in, number two. So the only rate limiting factor we have here and what we can put in is the donations we receive.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully we can encourage people to open their wallets a little bit today with some of the discussion we're having. So let's move away. We've talked a lot about research, and clearly that's a major focus for the foundation in terms of funding pharmacy practice research, and I think know and understand the benefits of that and why that's important to advance the profession. What about some of the other programs that the foundation has? I know if anybody goes to the foundation's website, they're going to see these other programs, some student support through CAPSI, Wellspring Award. What's that all about? AFPC Student Research Award. So tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, and the second one we spend money on to invest in a bigger way is the Wellspring Pharmacy Leadership Award. We started that in 2012. It was in memory of Barb Wells, who was a well-known pharmacist across Canada that was very involved in a number of associations, including NAPRA and CACDS, etc. So we get out every year about $10,000 in grants. It's really intended to kind of support leadership in pharmacy. Often it's young pharmacists that are have great ideas that they want to support. So this year's example, we have two recipients. One is Dr. Carrie Wilbur from UBC, and Carrie works out of the obviously at UBC for pharmacy students, but she also works at the pharmacy clinic, and she wanted to establish a program for greater involvement of patients into that pharmacy intervention. So that's one of the research projects that we funded, and the other was with a young woman out of London, Ontario, Reese Sue, who wanted to develop an educational program for pharmacists around digital health, e-technology, etc. I mean, it's quite a multitude of information, what's what. So she's going to develop a video training session for pharmacists to help them better understand all the different components of e-pharmacy, e-health, digital services, you name it. So that's an example of Wellspring. We look at that as being an investment into the future of pharmacy. The people we often don't give grants to, they go on to do more and bigger things within pharmacy. So we look at that to be an investment in the future. Some of the other awards, we developed the pharmacy management textbook. Derek, you mentioned on the top. That was an effort to engage more students. Pharmacy management, pharmacy business is something that very few students get exposed to in their the education as pharmacists. So, and that was a historical. I mean, back in 1998, the CFP put out a textbook back then. We put it out again, but it gave us an opportunity to engage with pharmacy students, and also that connected us with CAPSI. And we have a grant with CAPSI right now. We are currently the funders of the Passion in Pharmacy Leadership Award. That's given out to one recipient from each of the universities across the country. We're very proud of that. These young pharmacist students are phenomenal. And when you see what they've accomplished over the course of the year, they're selected by their professors, and they are going to be the future leaders of pharmacy. So we're very happy about that. The AFPC award, it's a grant to students, research papers, and so it's a way we connect with the faculty of pharmacy as well, and also the faculty piece. We talk about research, and our biggest interest there is the outcome of the research. But I should point out that we are the only research granting body that gives research money specifically to pharmacy. And that's of help to the universities. It's a help to their professors that are looking to publish. They're looking to do research, etc. So that's why we get 30 to 40 applications a year, because it's one place where researchers can actually come to get funding. So there's a number of things like that that we're pretty proud of. That we also invest in the profession.
Yeah, I think one of the things you just said is really important, and that is that part of the reason for having these other programs and making the investment is you're investing in the future of the profession, and really in individuals who look like they're the ones who are going to be the next generation of leaders within the profession. And I think that's really important to nurture and culture individuals who are going to take leadership roles within the profession going forward, so that we can, on a constant basis, keep moving things forward, and keep expanding the role of pharmacists, and enhancing the healthcare that Canadians are receiving from pharmacists across the country. So, really, really important stuff there. And again, I think it just further demonstrates a prudent use of the funds that the foundation does generate. In terms of actually supporting the profession in a lot of different ways, and as you noted, there is no really other granting organization that funds research that's this specific to pharmacy. So I think that's important. Um, let's shift gears just a little bit, and something maybe a little bit lighter, but it relates to a few other things that the foundation does, and that's the whole idea of the awards program that the foundation has. And I know there's a number of awards that the foundation supports. So tell us a little bit about what are the awards, and why is it important for the foundation to have that program around awards?
Thanks, Derek. Great question. The awards we give out, are really to recognize contribution to the profession. We do know that all the provinces have their own awards, but we felt that it would be nice to have something on a national recognition that would be, complementary to what CPHA does. And one of those is the Pillar of Pharmacy Award. You know well, you were a recipient of ours a few years ago, and it really is recognizing the contribution that people have made to the profession broadly. And each year we select a recipient, and we have never been disappointed in the people we selected, recognizing what they've contributed to the profession. One of the other awards we have is the Past Presidents Award, and we've offered that to associations and colleges across the country, both provincially and nationally. We give out about 17 to 20 of those awards a year. And what we particularly like about it, Derek, is the fact that these are volunteer positions, and we recognize the amount of effort that goes into being not just a board member, but being the president of these associations. And so we want to recognize the contribution that these people make. And since we started that a few years ago, we've now given over 100 Past Presidents Awards in each province across the country. So we're pretty proud that they're all volunteers. Like we recognize that we benefit from volunteers, so we wanted to make sure we recognize it. The last award that you had mentioned was the Lifetime Achievement Award. And again, it's to look at the long-standing contribution that somebody's made over the career of their in the profession. We don't give that out every year. We do that in conjunction with people that want to nominate people, often on retirement, but not always. So we're very we enjoy the fact that we can give out awards to recognize contribution to the profession.
Yeah, outstanding. And I think again, it's really nice for people to be able to receive that kind of peer recognition from the profession for their contribution of giving back to the profession in whatever capacity they did that, through a college or an association or a board. It's really great to have that kind of recognition. And I think that's probably a really good place for us to wrap up a little bit. I noticed you've got some great background and promoting the Pharmacy Management in Canada textbook there. So if people want to get a hold of you about the work of the foundation or the textbook, or to make a donation, what's the best way for people to do that?
Best is to go to our website, cfpnet.ca. You'll find all the information there about the foundation, how to donate. That segue, Derek, you sort of said about giving back, and that's why people become board members, etc. So I'll take that segue and say the foundation is another way that pharmacists can give back to their profession. So I hope you like what we do, with the support and the donations we get. So as I often say, the more we receive, the more we can give out. So we're here for the foundation, we're here for the profession, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Dayle, for spending the time with me today and helping us spread the word a little bit about the work of the foundation and how the foundation is integral to providing funding for practice research that is really advancing the profession of pharmacy and that every pharmacist across this country is ultimately benefiting from it. So I think that's outstanding. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit more about the foundation and hope that our audience has found today to be useful and educational. And I hope that this episode of Pharmacy in Flux is encouraging people to think about their charitable donations and maybe being a little more directive to that and spending some of their charitable donation money on their own profession and funding the practice research through the Canadian Foundation for Pharmacy, CFP. So thanks again for being with us today.
Thanks, Derek, and I love your program.
Terrific. Well, that brings a close to this episode of Pharmacy in Flux. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll catch you next time.